Welcome to the club. Hello everyone. And today we start discussing a new book, which is Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. And as usual, when we start discussing a new book and reading it, we start with the author's biography. So he is an American writer. He lived not a long time ago, so to say. He died only in 2012. He was born in 1920, and I don't know why it feels strange to me, because when you already have a book of this author on your shelf and it is considered also kind of classic, it feels that this author should have lived a long time ago already. But in fact, we can say that he almost lived at the same time as we. I know that you read and watched a lot of information about him.
Well, yes, this is one of my favorite authors. That's why I really enjoy learning something new about him. And I watched 2 videos, and I also read the book just because I wanted to do it for a long time. And when we chose our book, I decided that it's time to order this one. And
Finally?
Yes, finally, because it was in my cart for maybe a year and a half or 2 years. Maybe not this very book, but another one about his biography. But then I found this one and I decided to read it, but I just didn't have time, didn't have motivation to do it. And then we chose the book and I decided finally to read. It is interesting. I didn't finish it, but I read almost 3/4, I think. I really enjoyed it because now I know a lot more about this person, and I can see some things in his works that I didn't see before.
Frankly speaking, almost everything that is connected with our book club brings a lot of joy to me, because finally I read a lot of books that I wanted to read in English. I think that many people know this author by his novel that is called Fahrenheit 451, which is like maybe one of the most famous from his works. Have you read it?
Of course. So actually it was the first book that I read by Ray Bradbury, and when I first read it, so I think it was in the time of my university, because I think that we had this book on our list. I'm not sure, but probably we had.
Most probably.
Yes, I read it, and for me it was okay, but I can't say that I liked it from the very beginning, that it was something amazing, nice, and something that I fell in love with instantly. But the thing that shocked me most was that I read this book, and after that, for about 1 week, I was thinking about what was happening in the book, and it was so thought-provoking that I couldn't stop thinking about it. And usually it doesn't happen like that with me, because I read the book, and when I close the book I can think it over for a little bit, and then I get to my other businesses, affairs, and so on. And then when I finish the book, I just forget about it for some time, and I do not think about one book for such a long period of time. Yeah, so for me it was very shocking, and as I said, it was okay for me when I finished the book, but after this week I realized that it is one of the best books I've ever read, and I still think the same.
I think I read Fahrenheit 451 maybe even before my university. Again, because we had this book on the shelf, and I remember that my parents told that it's a great book, you should read it. That's why I read it, and I liked it. But I think because I was very young at that time, I didn't appreciate it as much as it should be. That's why I think after we end discussing Dandelion Wine, I think I probably am going to reread Fahrenheit 451 and maybe read something else. Many people think of Ray Bradbury as a science fiction writer. We chose a book, Dandelion Wine, and it is not a science fiction. And I heard this title of this book, but I have never tried to find out what it is about. I also thought that it's going to be a science fiction. Have you heard about this book?
Of course, just because I read a lot about Ray Bradbury, and I knew that it was kind of collection of his memories, and I wanted to read it. So first I read Fahrenheit, and then I also read Martian Chronicles, and I also really love this book, so it is one of the best books again. And I read some short stories by him, but I haven't read Dandelion Wine. I don't know why. Just because I am not a fan of short stories, and for me it is difficult to switch my attention so fast. Like, so I start to read the story and then it ends, and then I've got new story, new characters, and so on. But I love Bradbury's short stories, and he has very few novels. That's why I didn't want to read them all at once. So that was the first reason. And the second reason was that when I love something, or when I love someone that much, I'm a little bit afraid to start reading or start watching something by these people, just because I think maybe it won't be that good as the previous works, and I will be a little bit disappointed. So it happens with me quite often. That's why I didn't read Rowling's detectives for a long time, even though I'm a huge fan of detective stories. Actually, in this case, it disappointed me.
Really? I don't know why. I haven't even attempted to try reading her other books. I don't know why. Maybe because Harry Potter's universe is such a vast one, and I can reread it and every time find something new. Maybe because I also didn't want to try reading her other books, and also maybe because I was looking for her new fantasy stories, but she decided to switch to detectives.
I was a bit afraid to read this book, but at least for now everything is great, so Bradbury never disappoints me and it's cool.
Though many people know him or consider him as a science fiction writer, he himself didn't like when he was called a science fiction writer. He said that, for example, Fahrenheit 451 may be considered as a science fiction, and the Martian Chronicles is only his fantasy, what could happen. And he himself didn't consider this book to be a science fiction. Dandelion Wine that we picked this time is considered one of the greatest of his works. When I started reading this book, I didn't know what to expect of it, but I am deeply impressed by the story, and especially by the manner of writing, by the words that are chosen, and they really reach some deep parts of my heart and soul, and I think a lot. So you can see I have marked 23 places only in the first part of this book.
As for science fiction, you mentioned that he wasn't happy when he was called a science fiction writer, but according to this book, he also didn't like this genre just because it was not considered to be real literature at that time, because a lot of people were prejudiced against this genre because it was not something serious, so it's some fantasies, something that is not going to happen, and it was considered a low literature. And that's why he even insisted that his works weren't published with this mark, like science fiction, just because he thought that people wouldn't like to buy these books only because of this sign. That's also why some of his main stories and also Fahrenheit were published in Playboy, just because no one else was ready to publish, because they wanted to keep this high rank and to publish just serious literature, as they called it.
Wow, a very nice and interesting fact. What I found interesting also that in his youth he spent much time in the Carnegie Library in Waukegan, reading such authors as Herbert Wells, Jules Verne, and Edgar Allan Poe, which also are very famous authors. He said that at 12 he began writing traditional horror stories, and he tried to imitate Poe until he was about 18. One of the facts I didn't know about him, of course I didn't know a lot of facts about him, but still I found this very amusing. When he was young he was also a cartoonist and loved to illustrate his own works or some other authors' works, which also amazing. So Bradbury cited Verne and Wells as his primary science fiction influences. He identified with Verne, saying, "He believes the human being is in a strange situation in a very strange world, and he believes that we can triumph by behaving morally." I liked this quote very much, and I agree that a human being is a human being when he behaves morally and thinks about what is good and what is right.
Ray Bradbury was born 10 months. He said that he remembered a lot of facts about his childhood, and also he said that he remembered the moment of his birth.
Wow.
Yeah, well, no one knows if it's true or not, but it's just the story. At 8 months, child develops some physical abilities like eyesight and also brain and so on. So probably that's why he thought that he remembered some fact. His family had 4 children, if I'm not mistaken. So he had twin brothers, but one of them died even before he was born. And also he had a sister, and she also died because of disease. And that's why his mom was very anxious because she lost 2 children, and she cared a lot about Bradbury and his brother. He grew up as a very sensitive man because his mom was so worried about him all the time. Also, his favorite holiday was Halloween, and it's really nice. And his mother loved cinema a lot, and it affected him because he also loved it a lot. They went to cinema a lot of times together. He was a really big fan of different films and different actors, and probably it affected his way of writing, just because when we read his works we can see that the sentences are quite short and they are quite straightforward, and it's usually what we can see on the screen when we watch the films.
To add, he was given the middle name Douglas after actor Douglas Fairbanks, and also one of the things I remember that he also wanted to become an actor. So according to this book, he had a number of professions that he wanted to choose, but eventually, so he became a writer. Despite he was a science fiction writer and he wrote a lot about development of technologies in future, he didn't use car, he couldn't drive because when he was a child, he witnessed a serious accident, and he was shocked, and he also said that, I do not remember the exact quote, but something like, cars are so dangerous that they kill more people than wars do. And my probably most favorite fact from his biography is the story about magicians, because he also was a great fan of different tricks, and once he went to his uncle's funeral, and there he saw a tent with magician, and it was Mr. Electrico, who was a very famous magician those times. He sat on his electric chair and he used a sword to knight the children. He did it with Ray, and he also said the words "live forever," and it is really a cute fact in his biography, just because we all know that he lives forever on our shelves and in our hearts and in
a lot of works of literature and cinema.
Yes, indeed. I also wanted to mention a fact that after a rejection notice from the pulp Weird Tales, Bradbury submitted Homecoming to Mademoiselle, where it was spotted by a young editorial assistant named Truman Capote. And it means that they knew each other. The authors were kind of like friends. Ray Bradbury also was a friend with Robert Heinlein. It's very nice that he had a lot of acquaintances among the people of the same mind, and they could exchange their ideas and help each other. Yes, I like this fact. I also liked his quote, "Libraries raised me. I don't believe in colleges and universities. I believe in libraries because most students don't have any money. When I graduated from high school, it was during the Depression and we had no money. I couldn't go to college, so I went to the library 3 days a week for 10 years.
About the quotes, I found the quote about science fiction, and he said that the function of science fiction is not only to predict the future, but to prevent it.
Yes.
And I believe it's very wise, and it should be like that, but unfortunately, it's not always like that.
At some point of my life, I tried to write myself to different stories or even novels, so to speak, and for me, it was kind of like a torture to invent characters, to expand their personalities or something like that, and to invent the stories. I just wanted to write something, but it was a very difficult process for me. And I liked how Ray Bradbury described his inspiration, and he said, "My stories run up and bite me in the leg. I respond by writing them down, everything that goes on during the bite. When I finish, the idea lets go and runs off." I just think it's amazing and wonderful when this comes to you on its own and you just write it down. And I would really love to experience such an emotion, such an event. I don't know how to describe it. And maybe one day when I get older, I don't know. Though I think that writing and inspiration is also kind of work, because the more you practice, the easier it gets to invent something. Though of course, we understand that Ray Bradbury is a prodigy.
He had this habit when he went to the shops and he just looked at his own books, the books written by him, just to feel proud of himself. Yeah,
I would do the same.
Yeah, and once he came to a bookshop and probably he even asked about this book. So, do you have this book? You know, it was written by me.
Great.
And yeah, so there was a saleswoman. They just started talking to each other, and he understood that she's a very interesting and beautiful person. And then they started their relationship, and he loved her a lot, and they had a very nice family and 4 daughters, if I'm not mistaken. And at one point of time, so everything was great in his family. And at one point of time, his wife said that she wanted a divorce, and he was like, "What? Why? What happened? What's wrong?" There were not so many details about problems in their relationship, just the fact that she wanted a divorce. And then he was asked, "And what did you do when you heard such news that your wife wants to leave you?" And he said, "I just started to cry, probably." And she was shocked. Well, she wasn't shocked probably because it's not a secret that Bradbury cried a lot, so he wasn't very shy in his emotions. So it was just a usual fact about him. But yeah, he started crying, and she started to comfort him, and then eventually nothing happened because probably they discussed something, they worked a little bit, and everything went back to normal.
Wow, I didn't know how they met, how they got married and all of that stuff, but I enjoyed the fact that his wife was the only woman he dated and that they were married until her death. I don't know why I appreciate such things in people's biographies and people's lives, and also I think that it's great when people are emotional. It is very much important, especially for the writers, because only if you are emotional you can describe emotions in words. That's what I think.
Yeah, and also he said about his wife that she's a very clever person and that he can't understand men who are married to women who are not that clever that they are.
I admire men who like clever women.
His wife spoke 4 languages and she was a very educated person, so she was really smart.
So anything else? No. Then let's finally get to the book. And of course, we start with the summary. So the book is not very long, that's why we are going to have only 2 parts discussing it. So today we discuss the first half of the book, and next episode we are going to discuss the second half of this book. Wanted to add something?
Yes. So I just remembered the fact about the moment of publishing this book. So when he first wrote this book, so it was a collection of short stories, and it is a collection of short stories, but not divided in these stories, just that go like one novel. And in fact, there were a lot more stories in this book when he wrote it, but then the editor, the publisher, advised him to split this book in 2 parts, and he just took some of the stories from this book, and then 50 years later they appeared in another book, Farewell Summer. Yeah, so this is like the second part of Dandelion Wine.
Wow, I didn't know this fact. Thanks for mentioning it. So shall we start with the summary?
Yes.
Okay. Early in the morning, a 12-year-old boy, Douglas Spaulding, uses magic to wake up the people in his town. It's the beginning of summer in 1928, and while out in the woods with his father and brother Tom, he has a special moment that makes him feel truly alive for the first time. Summer starts with new sneakers, which Douglas persuades shopkeeper Mr. Sanderson to give him. Douglas shows Tom a notebook where he writes down everything that happens to him during the summer, including his thoughts on the other people in the story and his feelings about life and death, time and change. One night, Mrs. Spaulding worries because Douglas hasn't returned from playing, so she takes Tom out into the dark night to the edge of a scary ravine. There, Tom has a sudden realization that people are completely alone in their lives and that life is truly lonely and isolating. Both he and his mother are scared for Douglas, but just when it seems like the ravine will win, Douglas returns without a care in the world. The town jeweler Leo Hoffman suggests that grandfather and Douglas shouldn't talk about dull and sad things. They propose that Leo should create a happiness machine. Leo decides to do just that. Leo sits with his wife, who tells him that they don't need a happiness machine, but Leo is determined. Still fixated on making the machine, he asks if his wife is happy, and she responds sarcastically. Leo then works tirelessly to achieve his goal. He ends up making the machine, but it only spreads sadness and makes him realize that happiness is found in his home and family. Mrs. Bentley is an elderly woman who is relatively new to the town. She meets some of the children but doesn't like them when they mock her for never having been a young girl and for being old her whole life. After thinking about what her deceased husband would say, she decides to live in the present and embrace being old.
Mr. Trident, the trolley motorman, tells the town children that the trolley is being phased out and the bus service starts. Miss Fern and Miss Roberta had purchased the Green Machine, a charming electric vehicle that did not require a license and was quiet and elegant. Now they are frightened because they accidentally hit a man with it and ran away from the scene. They hide in their attic and decide the green machine must be hidden away. Douglas Spaulding relays through their brother that he saw everything and everything is okay, but the women are still shaken. Colonel Freely is known as the time machine by the local boys, and he tells them a lot of stories about the Civil War. The colonel is old and ill. Elmira Brown is certain that her neighbor and fellow member of the Honeysuckle Ladies Club, Clara Goodwater, is a witch. She firmly believes that Clara casts spells on her and manipulates the other women into always voting for Clara as the club's president. Clara denies it. At the next meeting, Elmira denounces Clara and tries to get the women to vote for her, but begins to feel sick and stumbles away. Clara pulls out a wax doll with thumbtacks in it. Elmira falls down a flight of stairs and Clara and the other women are horrified. Clara promises to never use black magic again and that Elmira can be president.
Okay, so overall impressions. I would like to start.
Okay.
I was deeply touched by many situations and it provoked me thinking a lot about the situations and about the words of different people. It's not very often that I feel so much emotional reading a book. I mean, I felt both joy and sadness. I felt like pleased and disgusted at some points, and I appreciate such things a lot because I know for sure that it's very difficult to write in a way to make people feel so much. I marked so many things and I don't even know what to discuss because it is better to read it yourself and to find out about everything yourself. But still, of course, we're going to discuss some, I hope. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm happy that you had almost the same emotions that I have. Just because when I read all Bradbury's books, it's more about emotions. So I can't explain why I like it so much. I can't find the words to explain what is beautiful in his works. But it really touches your soul, your heart, and you understand it very clearly. So, like what he means and the situations that we all have. It's so true to life because I think that a lot of people can find a lot of examples in their lives. I mean, something that happens in his books. Sometimes I just can't read his books just because I stop and I start thinking about these ideas, maybe not even the situations, but just ideas and thoughts that are written. Yes, it takes a lot of time sometimes to read, but at the same time I want to continue, so I want to read more and find more phrases that I would really like. And yes, so it's very difficult to discuss the book because I think we can just read it aloud and that's it. So there is no hidden sense in it. Well, maybe it is for all of us just because we perceive it from our point of view and we can find something else. Different people can find different things in this text.
Yes.
But generally, so it's, as I already said, it's quite straightforward. And yeah, you just admire these beautiful phrases and these beautiful thoughts.
So the first situation I would like to discuss is about the tennis shoes. I want to discuss it because the situation made me not only enjoy it, but I thought about my own childhood. And as a child, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents in their garden. And I just remember when you wake up in the summer and go out into the yard and pick berries, cover them with sugar and have it for breakfast, and then I go ride a bicycle and walk there. And also I understand that we're reading about the situation with tennis shoes, but I wanted almost instantly to live in the summer day and to walk barefoot on the grass. I hope I can do it because I don't even remember when was the last time that I went barefoot. It was because they felt the way it feels every summer when you take off your shoes for the first time and run in the grass. They felt like it feels sticking your feet out of the hot covers in wintertime to let the cold wind from the open window blow on them suddenly, and you let them stay out a long time until you pull them back in under the covers again to feel them like packed snow. The tennis shoes felt like it always feels the first time every year, wading in the slow waters of the creek and seeing your feet below half an inch further downstream, with refraction than the real part of you above water. I enjoyed how passionate he was about those tennis shoes and how passionately he described everything to the sales person. I don't remember when was the last time that I was so emotional about something.
Well, as for the beginning of the book, I also love how he creates this atmosphere of summer days, and I love the abstract. There were some days compound, completely off order, nothing but the world blowing in one nostril and out the other. And some days he went on were days of hearing every trump and thrill of the universe. Some days were good for tasting and some for touching, and some days were good for all the senses at once. It's just very, very beautiful. Yeah, so we can find something nice in all days if we just start noticing it. And so just continuing this thought, the abstract, thinking about it, noticing it, is new. You do things and don't watch. Then all of a sudden you look and see what you're doing, and it's the first time really. I really love the story about his mom and Tom when they didn't know what happened to Douglas and they were searching for him. There were a lot of nice thoughts about adults and children and how people perceive death and what they think when they can't find someone and they start panicking and they start thinking of different awful things that might happen to this person. Again, so one fact from the book is that this book contains a lot of facts from his biography and it's based on his real life. So here he talks about his little sister who died, and in the book it was said that when his sister was born he was a little bit disappointed because he loved attention a lot and he was jealous because his mom devoted a lot of her time and energy to her, and that he was so jealous that sometimes he thought, why do we need her? So I don't want her to exist. And then when she died, he was so guilty because he thought that maybe it was just because of my thoughts. And here also we have this short abstract about a little sister when she was the age of 7 and she died.
On the whole, this abstract about describing what death is, it gave me shivers. I was reading and I was on the verge of crying, really, because it is so deep.
Yeah, and I also love the thoughts that we are alone in this world. So despite we have society, but still at every moment of time we can realize that we are still alone.
He realized he and his mother were alone. Her hand trembled and he felt the tremble. Why? But she was bigger, stronger, more intelligent than himself, wasn't she? Did she too feel that intangible menace, that groping out of darkness, that crouching malignancy down below? I mean, it's very frightening, I think, for children when they understand that grown-ups are also afraid of something, because for them, for the children, their parents are everything to be looked upon, to follow, and everything that can protect them. And when you realize that your mother, your father, your someone older are afraid, it makes you even more afraid.
Yeah, and also continuing the thought, he realized that all men were like this, that each person was to himself one alone. oneness, unit in a society, but always afraid, like
Yes.
here standing.
So about happiness machine.
I also love this story.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The quote is, Lena, he glanced at the dictionary. Are you pleased, contented, joyful, delighted? Do you feel lucky, fortunate? Are things clever and fitting, successful and suitable for you? Cows are contented. Babies and old people in second childhood are delighted. God help them, she said. As for joyful Leo, look how I love scrubbing out the sink.
I love the moment when they created this
Sadness machine.
I'm just looking at the text.
Yes.
So when they created this happiness machine, and his wife tried it, and she was so disappointed, and she started crying and said that, well, I can see France, but I know that I will never go there. So why do you show me all that? It only makes me sad. And he asks, what else? What else? The machine says, you are young, I am not. It lies, that sadness machine. Of course, I really love the moment when he starts just thinking it over, and he starts to understand why this machine is not a happiness machine, but a sadness machine, and what is happiness to people and to himself. And he finds out that actually this is his family and his home.
I liked the words. I think those were the words of Tom and Douglas's grandfather. The first thing you learn in life is you're a fool. The last thing you learn in life is you're the same fool. The story about Mrs. Bentley made me kind of sad because on the one hand, everything that is said, I mean, for example, when she remembers her deceased husband and what he would say, it sounds, of course, reasonable, but still, I mean, so the first quote, my dear, you never will understand time, will you? You're always trying to be the things you were instead of the person you are tonight. Why do you save those ticket stubs and theater programs? They'll only hurt you later. Throw them away, my dear. On the one hand, yes, but on the other hand, I think that those things, they made us the way we are today. And if we haven't experienced everything, and if we haven't been in many situations, we wouldn't be the way we are. That's why it's not bad when you try to save some physical stuff to make you remember about some time in your past that was happy for you, for example. And when Mrs. Bentley says, they took my ring and my comb and my picture, thought Mrs. Bentley, trembling there on the steps. Oh, I'm empty. It's part of my life. Indeed, it is okay that you cherish some physical things and objects, and it's okay not to want to put them into the garbage. And I, in fact, didn't really enjoy when she agreed to tell children that she was always an old lady. I don't know, it made me sad. The girls were very rude, and I don't like when you're trying to persuade someone in something you believe. Why do you need to persuade those little children that you were young enough? After some time, they're going to get older, and they will see for themselves that they were rude, and that it's true that every person alive is once young and then old. It's just how life is. The story made me really upset.
So about Colonel Freely, I really love the comparison, like a man and a time machine, because I've never thought of it, and it is really so true. So we can travel in time, just remembering some facts and just telling stories about our past to other people, to other generations, and it is really something new and refreshing. So I've never thought of it. And I also loved that he spoke about wars, and he also said this nice phrase when children asked him, you remember winning, don't you? A battle won somewhere. No, said the old man deep under. I don't remember anyone winning anywhere, anytime. War's never a winning thing, Charlie. you just lose all the time, and the one who loses last asks for terms. All I remember is a lot of losing and sadness, and nothing good but the end of it. The end of it, Charles. That was a winning all to itself, having nothing to do with guns. But I don't suppose that's the kind of victory you boys mean for me to talk on. And it's such a beautiful phrase. I love it a
Heartbreaking.
lot. Yes, and
so true to life.
I also love the Martian Chronicles a lot, just because of the same reason. So they are full of these nice quotes, and in this book we have a lot of information and emotions of people about war and about our life, how people can spoil life sometimes. I just admire.
When I was reading this exact part, I thought again about my childhood and about the school time. In your school time, did people who fought on the World War II come to you? We were lucky because I think when we were at the beginning of our school days, I mean first, second, third grade, somewhere there, on the 9th of May, really people who fought in war, they came to us and they talked about those days and they told us stories from their past. And when I was reading this exact part, I thought that the boys go to Colonel Freely and they are excited to listen to those stories. And in fact, I'm not sure that we were as excited as those people, and I am very sad that we didn't appreciate those opportunities to listen to the stories of those people because they went through a lot. I would like to talk about the situation with John Huff. So John is one of the friends of the boys, and he comes one day and says that he has to move from the city because his father found a job in another city, in another town, and how they spent the last day together, trying to enjoy as much time together as they could, trying to play with each other and so on. There is a moment when he asks about memory. Why is it that when we can see something every day, we don't really pay much attention to it and we don't really appreciate it? But then when we understand that we might never see it again, we start to be upset about why we haven't noticed it before. This is my question.
There was also an abstract. It's just, if I didn't see these windows until today, what else did I miss? And what about all the things I did see here in town? Will I be able to remember them when I go away? Anything you want to remember, you remember. I went to camp 2 summers ago. Up there I remembered. No, you didn't. You told me you walk nights and couldn't remember your mother's face. And this thought is so scary, but at the same time, you understand that it is real. I don't know, maybe for some people memories work a little bit different because we all have different brain. I know that some people can remember a lot more things that I do, for example. But yes, sometimes I do not remember faces of people. I do not remember some crucial moments of my life, and it scares me. But at the same time, so I understand that it's kind of a natural process. But I still can't understand how can you forget this? Like, how can you forget your mom's face?
Yes, I think it's because you feel and you think that you can see your mom whenever you want.
Yeah.
And you don't try to sit and stare at her and remember every trait of her face and what color of her eyes. But then, yes, we might face the situation when suddenly the person stops existing and you really can never meet him or her, and you can never know when it can happen. And then I also remembered, so we're reading about the boys who are like 10, 12 years old and something like that, And I remember that, for example, at my kindergarten, I had a girl, and we were like very close friends, and I loved her a lot. I remember that her name was Julia, and at that time I wanted my name to be Julia. That's how strongly I liked her. But now I can't even remember her face. I can't remember how she looked. I only remember that we were very close friends. And at the point when we parted and when we had to study at different schools, we started to have new friends, and it's sad. So let's get to the vocabulary. I can start. The first one is put upon by somebody, which means to deceive, to fool someone. Douglas looked weakly, saw nothing, and felt put upon by his father, who, like grandpa, lived on riddles.
So my first phrase is on the nose, exactly right, often an exact amount of money or time. How many berries you picked so far, Tom? 256 on the nose, said Tom instantly.
To rave about something, to praise something very much. You may have noticed, said the old man, I'm wearing shoes. But not sneakers, sir. How you going to sell sneakers unless you can rave about them? And how you going to rave about them unless you know them?
My next phrase, to be hot for something, it is an informal way to say to be ready for something or want it very much. How many times I brushed teeth in 10 years? 6,000. Washing my hands? 15,000. Slept? 4,000 some odd times, not counting naps. Ate 600 peaches, 800 apples. Pears? 200. I'm not hot for pears. Name a thing, I got the statistics.
My next one is within an inch of life, which means almost to the point of death. Just wait till I get that boy. The lonely one's around again, killing people. No one's safe anymore. You never know when the lonely one will turn up or where. So help me, when Doug gets home, I'll spank him within an inch of his life.
Next phrase, get or have your dander up. To be or to become angry. She came over and looked into his face. Maybe nothing, maybe lots. I just delivered some mail to Clara Goodwater, up the street. Clara Goodwater, now don't get your dander up. Books it was, from the Johnson Smith Company.
My next one is the word flip, and it's an adjective, and I didn't know that it can be an adjective, and it means showing that you do not take something as seriously as other people think you should. My dear, when you are as old as I, they won't call you Jane either. Old age is dreadfully formal. It's always Mrs. Young people don't like to call you Helen. It seems much too flip.
And my last word is bric-a-brac. Small decorative objects of various types and of no great value. A night wind blew in the room. The white curtain fluttered against a dark cane which had leaned against the wall near the other bric-a-brac for many years.
Then I would like to mention this one, alarms and excursions. So, military action as representative fragments of a battle, sound effects of trumpets or clash of arms, used as a stage direction. The witch smiled charmingly. Put it in a jar of still water. Be an angleworm come morning. Oh, Elmira, look at yourself. At last, won't you? All these years, blaming others for your own mallet feet and floaty ways. You ever read Shakespeare? There's little stage directions in there. Alarms and excursions. That's you, Elmira. Alarms and excursions. Now, get home before I feel the bumps on your head and predict gas at night for you. Shoo! So, anything else to add about the vocabulary? Thanks for watching this episode. Next time, please join us because we're going to end discussing this book. All the contacts are in the description box below. We're going to post there, I think, some more quotes from this book. So please subscribe to our Telegram and VK. So thanks for watching and live long, and
remember that some days are good for tasting, some for touching, and some days are good for all senses at once.
Thanks for watching. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Господи, источники, sources, and I've read 2012. But in fact, he was our современник. У меня сегодня все плохо с этим. Карт.
Наверное. Просто карт. Просто шопинг типа странно, она не подходит.
Карт, мне кажется, нормально.
So, Martian
Chronicles.
Chronicles.
Again?
I read Martial Chronic. Да блин, я не могу это выговорить.
Давай. Okay, so in biography.
May I ask
Yes.
about science fiction?
Yes.
So just because it's the right place
Of course. Which is also interesting. Interesting is the word of the day.
That's his biography.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mention some things that I think are interesting
And important.
Yes, he was born at the, как это сказать, типа на сроке.
When his mother was
10th, 9th pregnancy, что я не знаю, как сказать. Короче, ладно. He was born when he was could be born 10 months. Okay. Гиперопека. Я хотела сказать гиперопека, ну типа. Фанни, блин, я не знаю, какое слово использовать, чтобы описать.
they were married. I think it is especially it. Что такое сегодня? Окей.
Блин, да я уже не знаю, что так много, может это на второй выпуск оставить. Сейчас говорить.
Давай.
Farewell Summer или Summer Farewell? Сейчас скажу. Да, Farewell Summer.
Berries. I'm not sure. Как будет земляника по-английски?
Не знаю.
Like forest strawberry or something like that.
Там the mom. Блин, сейчас. I really love the story about.
And in fact, я сейчас уже тоже почти заплачу. Капец какой. What was his name? John. What's his surname?
Что-то на Х, по-моему.
Да. And все.
Small decorative.
Decorative. Не знаю, куда ударение, честно.
Decorative.
Прекрасно. Третий вариант.